Hey, college sports fans, we are going to take a look at the Clemson Tigers portal expectations, at least very early. It's almost impossible to nail those down. And then we'll take a look at the Disappointment Bowl. I mean, the Pinstripe Bowl in New York City. It's going to be two preseason playoff and championship contention hopefuls, Clemson versus Penn State, with records around 500 squaring off at Yankee Stadium. I'm Bill Zimmerman. This is the Reigns Pre-Molly Podcast, Season 4.
I'm Daniel Shirley. I think it's the Wii Bowl because we get to play in a Wii. No, but no. Look, I mean, you get to play a brand like Penn State that at least gets the juices flowing a little bit. I'm sure that's what Dabo Swinney will talk about when he talks about the matchup, and that's fine. I get it. It's what these games have been for most of our lives, right, Bill? I mean, you play in these kinds of games, but now it comes after the disappointment of seeing the 12-team playoff field announced and realizing what you're missing out on. I mean, this is like going to the NIT in basketball, really is what it is, and that's fine. I mean, Clemson's been to the NIT. They've almost won the NIT a couple of times, and it would have been great if they would have. But they're going to play a game. We'll be watching. It's cool that it's at Yankee Stadium. It's cool that it's against Penn State. But for me, it just kind of hits home of the lost season that 2025 is for this football team. I mean, you watch the ACC championship game last night and you go, those two teams? Really? That's who is playing for the ACC championship? And I'm sure people in the ACC office probably thought the same thing. But for Clemson, it's, you think about what could have been with 2025 and that you could have won the ACC easily. If those are the two best teams, and you look back at the losses for Clemson through the year, and Steve Norris, who I do the radio show with here in Macon, says this all the time. Every team that's won a national title, you go back and look at their season, they've got a game or two where you go, oh, they didn't look great, or they even lose. And that's fair. So you look back at Clemson's season and you go, dang, the LSU game, the Georgia Tech game. Maybe the Syracuse game was the stinker, where you just did not play well at all. But you look, okay, what about the SMU game or the Duke game? If you just win two of those ACC games that you kind of gave away, maybe you were Duke, right? And were in that mix with all those weird tiebreakers, and maybe that's you playing Virginia last night. So and we kind of talked about this on not the last episode, but the one we did after the South Carolina game, where you go 7-5, you beat South Carolina, you beat Florida State. At least you feel better about that. But Bill, I'm always going to look at the 2025 season and go, man, it could have been something much different, because you see all these teams that are going to be in the playoff. I mean, how many of them really do you look at and go, I don't know that Clemson can play with them?
Well, Notre Dame looks at several of them and thinks they don't belong there.
Well, that's true. But I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean,
Yeah.
it just feels like where, in past couple of years you go, yeah, I don't know that Clemson could have played with them. But this year is to me, it feels like it's wide open. And you could have gotten on a hot streak and gone on a run. And it's just going to always be that year of what if for the Clemson football program.
And not just, a play or two away, as we've heard, and you and I have
No,
talked about that, but Dabo
yeah,
Swinney has
but
said in past years, oh, we were only a play or two away. Well, no, most of those games were numerous repeated mistakes. It wasn't one fluke play, it wasn't one bust, it was several that another
right.
team was able to exploit and then turn that into a victory and earn those wins. I mean, I don't think Clemson gave any away. You'd talk about the refs maybe giving away that Duke game or giving Duke a window to come in and take that win. Um, you know, I, ew, where do you go with that? And I think there's kind of a mirror image staring back at Clemson in Penn State. Very much the same thing. Of course, they lost their quarterback for the season, not just a game. Drew Aller one of the other prime quarterbacks out of that class that Cade Klubnik was in. There were a lot of comparisons. Who's going to have the bigger season? Will the playoff determine who the better quarterback was this year? Neither one had a good year. And Aller's numbers, even before he was out, didn't look all that great. The offense overall, not that impressive. They do have a very nice running back, I think, and we'll get more into matchups and things like that as the game gets closer. I also think the defense, you saw some Penn State fans online talking trash at Clemson. Good, you can have Tom Allen. We don't need him. He was terrible the one year he was here. Well, how good did Jim Knowles turn out? Maybe it wasn't Tom Allen that was your problem last year at Penn State. He got a guy in the first round. Let's see if Jim Knowles gets any Nittany Lions into the first round this year. The other thing that makes it tough to have like we used to have so much fun with like an early prediction, and then we'll look at things closer and we'll say if it's the same or if looking more at it later really changed our minds. I don't know that you can really do that these days because you got to wait, see who opts out, see who opts in. That's going to dovetail some portal talk that we'll get into in a little bit. But assuming that both teams have about equal pickups and losses from opt-outs and portal and going pro early and all those things, what do you think, when you look at this game, what's kind of your gut saying, well, right out of the gate, I would say I expect this kind of game and probably X team should be favored.
I would think, well, first off, I'm glad they're playing and not pulling a Notre Dame, right? You could talk about, I don't know how you sell that. And I love Marcus Freeman. I think he's a great coach.
Yeah.
How do you sell that to your program of we're going to fight, we're going to compete, we're going to do everything it takes, but oh no, we didn't get our way for the playoffs, so we're going to take our ball and go home. This Clemson team could have taken its ball and gone home at 1-3, and it didn't. So for all my negativity about the season and about this team, and there's been quite a bit of it this year, at least they kept playing and they fought through their own garbage. I mean, it was their own garbage, but they did fight through it. I think it's going to be a lot like the South Carolina game. I do. I could see it being, a lot like that where, it's a close game in the fourth quarter. I just don't know that this Clemson team can blow anybody out. I don't know that they have that I don't know that they have that in them, and we'll see who's going to play. And the game's on the 27th. The portal opens on the 2nd. So do guys play and then jump in the portal, or do they get, make their announcements and not play, or who's going to opt out for the draft? Is Antonio Williams going to play in this quote unquote meaningless game? I don't like meaningless when you only get 13 or 14 games anyway.
Be sure to subscribe at youtube.com/Clemson Kickoff. It's free. It's the best place to catch all our episodes, and it's the best place for you to comment with your reactions. Good point.
But I understand if Antonio Williams or somebody who says, man, I don't want to get hurt. I'm trying to get ready for the NFL draft. I don't have a problem with that. I know a lot of people do. Probably a lot of people our age are like, oh my, back in our day, guys would have played. I don't care about that stuff. If you want to play, that's great. If you don't, I'd rather you not play than play half-heartedly and then get hurt. Right.
Which some people say is a good way to get hurt.
Right. And yeah. I don't want an Antonio Williams to go get hurt in this bowl game just to prove a point. I want him to go have a great NFL career so then Tyler Grisham can sell that to the next wave of wide receiver recruits.
Sure.
See, look what we do here. This is what we do. These are the kind of players that we get. So, the opt-out stuff, you can't predict who's going to win a bowl game, who's not. What if Cade Klubnik says, I'm not playing. I've done everything I could do at Clemson. Heck, it might be better for Clemson in 2026 if he did that. See what Chris Vizina could do for a full game, and a full month of prep or 3 weeks of prep, all that stuff. We've talked about that before. But I think Clemson should be favored to win. If Cade plays and again all the opt-outs or whatever are on even, or even killed, on the same level, I would think Clemson should be favored to win, but mainly because of the quarterback situation. Because you've got your guy, they've got a newer guy playing, all that kind of stuff. But also, they're playing with an interim coach. They're transitioning to the new staff. Who's going to be back? Who's not on that staff? With Matt Campbell taking over, which I think, it, I know we don't want to talk too much. This is not a Penn State podcast. They did about as well as they could have done by getting Matt Campbell,
Oh yeah.
as long as it took them to find a coach. I think that was a great hire for them. But I mean, all that, I mean, so you got two coaching staffs at once. Who's on what staff? I mean, how much are you really bearing down on the Clemson game plan if you're trying to find the next job? And I don't blame the coaches for that. This is real life stuff. So it's almost impossible to say who's going to win or what the line should be or whatever. But what I know about this Clemson team is they're not going to blow anybody out. It's going to be a close game. It's going to be low scoring, and kind of maybe sloppy at times.
Probably.
So we'll see. I'm glad it's a noon game. Get it done, get it over early in the day, and let's go about our way into getting ready for 2026.
I did want to mention Klubnik. You kind of read my mind on that stuff. He did say a few weeks ago that if Clemson were to get a bowl bid, that he would end up playing in that game. I think I also may have mentioned in one of these podcasts, I don't remember if I was texting you though, instead, he does have the thigh, he does have the ankle. He could say, hey, you know what? I want to get ready for,
Yep.
Senior Bowl or one of those. And I don't know if he signed up for one of those postseason senior games yet. Or he may say he wants to get ready for the combine, or he may want to say, just wants to get ready for the draft process, whatever. Maybe he wants to study for the Wonderlic. Uh,
Don't do it. Don't take it. Well, and Bill, to your point, he's the kind of guy that those games are important for
yes,
because he's not a lockdown draftable quarterback. He's got to show some stuff in those games and in the process to get drafted.
yeah. And I do think he will get drafted, if only on the tape from his junior year. Some coach, some GM will be in agreement and say, hey, we can work with this guy. We can turn him into something. We see what's wrong. There's 32 teams out there to pick from, and all it takes is one combo. You saw Tim Tebow get into the first round once upon a time. So I do think Klubnik will get drafted and looked at. He may be out of the league quickly like Taj Boyd was, and Boyd, one of the Clemson greats of all time, but his game just didn't translate to the NFL. We'll see what can happen with Klubnik and what kind of coaching he can get. It's a different era of the NFL, and that may help him do a little better because of the somewhat dual threat nature that he brings to the table. Christopher Vizina, I would love to see him get significant reps. And even if Klubnik hears, hey, yeah, we're going to play Vizina a good bit, and decides, you know what, I don't want to risk all this just to play, half a game. Well, then, look, understandable. No shade thrown his way if he
Nope.
chooses to go that route. But I would definitely like to see Vizina get some significant reps. And, we talked about the coaching turmoil at Penn State. By the time this bowl game gets here, there could be some coaching changes on the Clemson Tigers staff as well. We could
Yep.
have some
That's
new
right.
guys coming in. We could have some guys hired away. We could have some. There are some reports about John Gra going to Samford and taking some Clemson analysts and or assistants with him. We'll see how that shakes out and what is announced from that development should it come to pass and become an official deal. Um,
Well, he's
then
official. It's just
Gra
what's
is,
coming.
yes.
Right. Yeah. 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 Right. Right.
True, very true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Everybody else is who we wonder about, and then players. If they look, we'll get into this list that we've got on the screen here. Like, I've got Ashton Hampton on there, but he's got deep family ties through his father to Mike Reed. So, you know, if Mike Reed were to choose another job or just decide that he has had a full career, which he has, and you wouldn't blame him, would Ashton Hampton stay? Would he move on? You look at what about Nick Eason with deep ties to Vic Burley? Well, if Nick Eason is one of those guys who moved on for whatever reason, would Vic Burley stay because they are distant cousins? So it was a tie between them when Eason was at Auburn and recruiting Burley, and that's how they discovered that, if I remember the story correctly. And now they're at Clemson together. Would that end up being another situation where you lose a player? So that's on top of, hey, someone could throw a ton of money at a big
Right.
name player, a big talent player.
Never
Uh,
know.
another program might just look better, and they might look around and see a scheme and go, "Oh, I want to try to play in that scheme." There are all kinds of reasons a guy could leave, and so it's very hard. I wanted to say at the top of this graphic that we figured these guys will be back, and well, it's so loose that even that didn't feel quite right. But the implication of putting these guys on the screen at least is to say, well, it's stronger than just possible. I mean, all 105 guys are possible, but these are some of the guys that we look at and say, here are some likely, definitely not guaranteed building blocks that Dabo Sweeney and his assistants for next year can look to and say, all right, we're gonna lean on you guys to get things done. And I think Vizina being at the top of that list, you want to see him play. And I also want to see some of these other younger guys get some reps. Maybe you don't need a full game out of Peter Woods. I know TJ Parker has been rotating, sharing more snaps and taking what looks less like a starter share of the snaps, through the season as that has gone on. Monster game against South Carolina for TJ Parker. So, and with Jaheim Lawson out, there's going to be that opportunity for other guys to get snaps. Wade Woodaz, how much do you play him versus bringing somebody in? We do know two portal departures already, and that's Shelton Lewis in the secondary and D. Creighton at linebacker. We'll see who joins them. I guess I want to turn this into also a little bit of a preview, and it doesn't really fit the graphic, but where should Clemson look in the portal most strongly? And as much as I have talked about, hey, I want to see Vizina develop, I want to see Vizina get a shot. We haven't seen much of Christopher Vizina because of a lot of close games the last 2 years. There hasn't been mop-up time for him to get in. There haven't been decisions to commit to getting him in no matter what, whether the game is close or a blowout in Clemson's favor or a blowout in the other team's favor. He just hasn't gotten on the field much. And much like I said 2 years ago after Cade Klubnik's rocky sophomore season, I believe quarterback is a position that should be at the top of that shopping list. We'll find out if it is or not in due time.
Yeah, a couple things. I definitely think they should go get a portal quarterback. Again, but are you going to go get Sam Levitt, and he's going to want to come in and say, okay, you're the starter. Well, I don't know that Clemson is going to get somebody and say the job is yours, because I think the coaching staff wants to give Vizina and Tate Reynolds and these other guy, Chris Denson. I think they want to give all those guys a fair shot to compete for the job. And I think that's the best way to do it. I think the thing with Cade was he was given the job after his freshman year, and there was really no competition for it. And you started talking about it right then. And and I know he played well in the ACC championship game, and you say, "Oh, the future's bright. He's a big time recruit and all this stuff." But at least there should have been some competition on the roster instead of just kind of placeholders behind him. So, I think quarterback should be a position. I don't know that it will be. From hearing Dabo talk about it at the news conference I think it was signing day, right? Where they talked about, who's going to that Reynolds and my brain is freezing. The other
Is
young
it
quarterback.
Bradley? Brock Bradley?
Yes. Sorry, my brain just froze on me there for a second.
Same.
Dabo said those two guys are coming in to compete. Well, okay. Well, Chris Denson's going to want to compete, and Vizina's going to want to compete. So you got four guys competing. You would think one of those guys is going to be the guy. So maybe you can't get another quarterback. I really believe, Bill, they've got to find a running back somewhere in this month that we're looking at, or month and a half or 2 months to February. I don't think, when Adam Randall leaves, and he's another guy in the bowl game, I'd love to see Davidson play a lot.
Me too.
Because, get him the reps. But Okay, so you're going to go into next year's season. You didn't sign a running back out of the high school class. Do you really want to go into next year's season with the same running backs on the roster minus Adam Randall? I don't think so. So I think you definitely got to go get a running back in the portal class or sign somebody in February. Maybe there's a diamond in the rough out there that who didn't sign this past week to running back where you could get in the mix and sign them in February. I would say offensive line, but they've got so many offensive line recruits the last 2 years. If there's a veteran out there, maybe who could help. I don't know that wide receiver is a spot that you have to go get somebody, and look, we're forgetting they just played the last quarter of the season without Bryant Wesco.
Right.
And again, we're also talking about incoming. We don't know who's leaving yet. So if somebody who's on this list that you've got here leaves, then you got to add somebody at that spot because you probably didn't high school recruit for that spot because you weren't expecting them to leave.
Connect with us on social media. That's at Clemson Kickoff. Whether you're on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, or Facebook, you'll find us there.
Right. I think you got to get some defensive linemen because they are thin on the defensive line.
Ends in particular.
Right. They are thin at linebacker behind Sammy Brown and Alexander. And again, we're counting on these guys being back.
Yeah.
And they are thin at safety. So I think, man, I'd love to see at least one player at each position on defense, maybe two. Bill, it feels like the depth on this roster is, light years behind where it was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So I would definitely hit running back, and then wherever you got to hit on defense, give me some of that.
Yeah. One place on the offensive line I would look is a veteran center, a guy who's used to being the signal caller, a guy who's proven he can get out there, snap the ball accurately. I know they've worked, I believe it was Harris Sewell that worked there in the spring and was kind of going to be the guy if Linthicum ever couldn't go. I hope I'm right getting that right.
I believe that's right.
It's easy to get Sewell and Sadler mixed up in your head.
But those guys have moved around on the offensive line so much the last few years. It's hard to know who could play what spot. And I was talking about Linthicum today. I'm glad you brought his name up. I would have never thought 2 years ago he was going to turn into a 2-year starter. Where you go, this guy's going to play, and he's going to play every week. Because when he first got here, it was rough. But I think that's also, again, you can sell that. He might be a guy who gets a chance at the next level. And would you have ever thought that when he first started playing? No way. No way.
Which shows what some of these guys might be able to do and elevate very similarly. Remember Cornell Powell, another one of those guys who was able to do that. There have been guys who've been able to do that through the years. You didn't know that Ryan Carter would be able to have a huge senior year, and he did. So on and on. I think it's fair for fans to be frustrated that Dabo Swinney always expects that guys are going to be able to rise like that, rise to the occasion and become, a national championship level contention starter. And it doesn't happen as often as we would like, So there are also guys who just kind of flatten out. And then you look at Klubnik regressing this year, and some guys regress. Mark Fields was a defensive back who just always thought he was going to get there and got there at the very, very end of his last year on campus.
Played great,
really
in the
good
championship game.
Yes, absolutely. But it kept taking a long, long time, and you never know when it's going to happen. So the portal provides a new outlet to say, hey, I don't just have to pump these guys up with faith and confidence and lessons and coaching and, tough love and positive support. You can also go out and find another guy who has put on tape that he can do the job. And so, yeah, I don't expect Swinney to take two guys at each defensive position, but I would not argue with it if he did. I think
At
running
least
back
one,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And then I think you're spot on with running back. TJ Moore on this list, there was kind of a cryptic post on Instagram, which kind of makes him, I don't know, 50-50. In my mind, I would love to have TJ Moore back playing for the Tigers as being a Tigers fan. Obviously, it would be wonderful to see him there. He's got to make his decision about what's best for him. He will probably want to see what's going on at quarterback, what's going on at offensive coordinator. Uh, I think a lot of the skill position guys are smart if they want to know what's happening with that offensive line to enable the offense to fire on all counts, fire on all cylinders. We'll just have to wait and see, though, how that's going to go. I don't know that they need a tight end. I think if TJ Moore and Tyler Brown were both to come back next year, I don't know that I'd say that they need to get a portal receiver,
Right.
especially with three really high rated guys coming in from signing day. That's where you can have your depth at receiver is hoping that at least one of those guys emerges and possibly two. And it could be a year like T. Higgins and Justin Ross emerging late in the year. Could be a year like Bryant Wesco and TJ Moore emerging late in the year. Tyler Grisham has shown that he can get freshmen ready to play. It's not just Wesco and Moore. It was Brown before that. It was Antonio Williams before that. Talked about that a lot. I'll try to stop going to that well for a topic. It's going to be busy when the portal opens up. Typically it moves quick with announcements, and so that's the other thing that we need to see is if Clemson wants to be a player in the portal, Dabo Sweeney's got to get accustomed with, all right, what is, we're not going to contact a player directly, but who are the people on our staff that are allowed to talk to certain people representing the player? Where is the legality on that? Where is the line that all the other teams push? What are you comfortable doing to get out there that, hey, here's our budget, here's our opportunity. Don't discount Clemson. Come to Clemson. I don't know
Well,
how
and
that's going to unfold.
yeah. And also, let's don't forget about Tristan Smith. Let's hope he gets that extra year back too.
Love
So
that.
if he's back, if he's and my goodness, I hope TJ Moore is back because I mean I think you saw what he can be in the South Carolina game. He was the crutch in the South Carolina game for him and Antonio Williams. Well, now Antonio Williams is going to be gone. So, but Bill, I think you saw Will Helt was unbelievable this year. Go get another guy like that, and he's going to be back. So,
And you
but go
have
get
to
a
think
couple of
he
those
knew he
guys.
was going to get starter level snaps. So it can't be a
Right.
total new thing to go out and say, hey, if you come here, you're probably going to start.
Well, all you got to do is look at the roster, look at the depth chart.
Yeah.
And the coaches can say, well, hey, we're thin here. Come be our guy here. All of this stuff is it's all spinning around at the same time. The coaching changes. Who's going to go to the NFL draft? Maybe somebody doesn't go to the NFL draft who we think will. Then that changes your plan.
Right.
What if Peter Woods and Parker say, hey, I didn't have as good a year as I want to have. I love it here. I want to play my last year here at Clemson. We've seen that before. Guys love it at Clemson and they love being part of it. Maybe hey, I want to be the leader for next year's team to get this thing turned around. I don't want to go out 8-5 or 7-6. So, that'll impact your decisions as well. So you got to get all that stuff done quickly before the portal opens that first week of January.
The Dabo Sweeney loves to say the locker room is the portal for Clemson. I will add this caveat this time around. Guys have to be committed to making it different if they come back. Like we saw some guys, I don't think Klubnik's the only guy that regressed from last season from 2 years ago to this past season. I think some others have as well. And I think they've got to look as coaches, but also the players look inward and say, hey, what caused that? Was it injuries? Was it life distractions? Whatever it might have been, was it just the tape got out and you couldn't, put enough different things together to overcome other people being able to take on your matchup more efficiently? Whatever it is, you got to figure it out and you got to come back determined to be better and not just come back and have another year. So that to
Right.
me is going
Absolutely.
to be a big challenge. And boy, I should like clip that and move it to the front. That feels important. So we are almost out of time, so we're going to wrap this up. We will definitely take a closer look at the matchups for the Pinstripe Bowl as the game gets closer. Clemson versus Penn State. Hope you found what we did useful as a quick first look at that. Definitely the portal will keep updating and news is going to keep breaking there. And as those opt-outs happen, we will find ways to bring you that news as quickly as we can, but also with our analysis of how it all fits, which is really how we try to set ourselves apart. So until that next episode, whenever it may be, for the Reign Supreme All White Podcast, I'm Bill Zimmerman.
I'm Daniel Shirley. Go Tigers.